She slapped an old woman, unaware she is the mother of her billionaire fiancé. The slap echoed so loud it silenced the birds in the trees and sent the mansion guards turning their heads. The old woman staggered, her frail hand still holding the moop stick, her back slightly bent, eyes wide with disbelief. Her cheek turned red where the young woman's palm had landed. The young woman stood tall, heels clicking back into place, her eyes narrowed in pride. "Next time, watch where you're splashing that dirty water," she hissed, dusting off the hem of her peach designer dress. She was beautiful, no doubt, flawless. Skin, sleek long hair, expensive gold earrings that sparkled in the sun. But her beauty was poisoned by the arrogance in her voice and the pride in her eyes. This wasn't the first time Atasawa had reacted this way. She had grown up spoiled by her father's money and pampered by a mother who believed shouting at housemaids showed strength. She believed any old woman holding a mop must be poor and irrelevant. And today, as she stepped into the estate of her billionaire fiancé, Richard, that same mindset followed her. The mansion gates were massive, black and gold, guarded by men in crisp uniforms. As her black wagon pulled in, she rolled down her tinted window and smiled proudly. "Soon I'll be the lady of this house," she whispered to herself. But everything changed in a single moment. The moment she got down from her car, clicked her heels forward and spotted Mama Esther cleaning the entrance pathway with a bucket and mop. The old woman looked tired, worn. Her wrapper had faded from too many washes, and her scarf barely covered the gray strands of her hair. Her hands were thin, but they moved with quiet grace as she wiped the tiles. She did not look up when Atasawa passed. That irritated her. "How dare you?" she muttered under her breath. "You see me walking, and you keep mopping like I'm nobody." Just then, a splash of water slid towards Atasawa's feet, touching the edge of her dress. It was not deliberate, just a miscalculation as Mama Esther wrung the mop. But that one drop was all it took. Atasawa's face twisted in anger. "You foolish woman," she barked, stepping back. "Do you know how much this dress cost? Can you even pronounce the name of the designer?" The Chapter 1. The slap that shook a mansion old woman looked up confused and trembling, trying to speak. It was not in 10, but before she could finish, Atasawa raised her hand and slapped her. The sound stopped time. A security guard who had just come around Theckerner paused, mouth open. The gardener watering flowers on the far side looked up in disbelief. Mama Esther dropped the mop and stood there stunned, one hand on her face, the other still shaking slightly. Atasawa pulled out a tis from her bag and began wiping her dress like something filthy had touched her. "Hey, people like you are why rich." "Home smell like sweat," she mumbled, shaking her head. She had no idea. She had no idea that the woman she just slapped had once gone 3 days without food just to pay her son's WC fees. That this old woman had slept on a hospital floor when her son fell sick at age 10 because she couldn't afford the bed fee. That this woman had sold her wedding ring to pay for her son's university application. She had no idea that this woman, now wiping tears and trying to remain calm, was the same woman who raised Richard, the man she claimed Tolov, the man whose house she now stood in. Inside the mansion, Richard sat on a call in his office when his phone vibrated. It was the head guard. He hesitated before picking up. "Sir," the voice came through uneasy. There's been a situation at the front gate." Richard's heart dropped. With a pang. "Your fiancé, she just slapped the cleaning woman. Your mother, sir." "Silence, sir," the voice repeated, but Richard didn't answer. He had stopped breathing. The phone slipped from his hand and hit the desk with a thud. For a moment he stared blankly at the floor, replaying the words in his head. "Your fiancé slapped the cleaning woman. Your mother." He stood up slowly, his chest-tight eyes darkening. He stormed out of the office. Outside, Mama Esther had picked up her mop and quietly resumed cleaning like nothing happened. But her eyes were wet. She was used to being overlooked, to being disrespected. People had done worse to her before Richard became rich. But this one could... This one was from a woman who claimed to love her son, a woman who would soon carry her family name. Atasawa didn't notice the change in the atmosphere. She was too busy admiring the pillars of the mansion and taking selfies near the fountain. "This will go on my Insta story," she said proudly, flipping her hair. But her moment of glory didn't last. A black SUV pulled into the courtyard at high speed and screeched to a stop. The driver barely parked before Richard jumped out. His face was like thunder. He didn't speak to anyone. He walked straight past Adasawa, who tried to hug him. "Babe, you're back early." He didn't look at her. He walked to Mama Esther, who tried to hide her tears. "Mommy, is it true?" he asked, his voice trembling. The old woman nodded, wiping her face with her scarf. Richard's heart shattered. Headed slowly, eyes locked on Adasawa. "You did this?" he asked coldly. She blinked, confused. "Babe, it's not what you think. That woman, she splashed dirty water on me. Look at my dress."
That
"Woman," he interrupted, his voice rising, "is the reason I'm standing here. That woman is my mother." The silence was deadly. Adasawa's mouth opened, but no words came out. The ground beneath her felt like it shifted. I didn't know," she whispered. "Exactly," Richard said, his voice sharp, filled with pain. "You didn't care to know? You saw an old woman and decided she was beneath you. You judged her. You humiliated her." High's eyes were red now, his fists clenched. "This is the woman who starved to feed me, who begged to keep me in school, while we're at 3 jobs to get me here." Adasawa's legs trembled, her face drained of color. I'm sorry," she mumbled, but it was too late. Richard looked away, disgusted. "You don't belong here," he said quietly. "Leave." The word shit her harder than a slap. She tried to move closer, but he raised his hand. "If you can't respect my mother, you can't be in my life." She stared at him broken, but he had already turned away. He held his mother's shoulder gently, leading her back inside. And that was how Adasawa's dream of becoming a billionaire's wife ended, because she slapped the one woman who mattered most. Not knowing she had slapped the very heart of the home she wanted to call hers. The sun began to fade behind Thedel buildings, surrounding the estate, casting long shadows across the marble tiles where Mama Esther had been slapped. But inside the mansion, silence now screamed louder than any slap ever could. Edessa's heels click-a-dunced certainly as she stood at the entrance, frozen, watching the man she called fiancé disappear into the house, his arm gently around his mother. For the first time in a long time, she was not sure of herself. Adasawa had never been told no. She was raised in a world where money opened every door and beauty commanded every room. Her father owned filling stations across the country. Her mother sold luxury fabrics to the wives of governors. From her teenage years, people praised her elegance. Teachers let her misbehave. Drivers waited hours just for her to choose which shoe. Towier. That morning, she had spent 45 minutes deciding between 2 earrings. But now, standing there with her designer dress, clinging to her skin and shame burning through her chest, none of it mattered. Inside the house, Richard gently guided Mama Esther to a chair in the private family lounge. "Sit, please," he said softly, kneeling beside her. She smiled faintly, still shaken but proud. "My son, don't be angry," she said quietly, brushing a tear from her cheek. "Maybe she didn't know who I was." Richard looked up, his eyes glassy. "Mama, it's not about knowing. It's about your character. A good woman doesn't need to know who you are before treating you with respect." Mama Esther's. It's Chapter 2. The woman who built a king's offend. Seen women like her before. They chase names, not hearts. But my son, remember what I always tell you. We don't return fire with fire. Where is above it? Richard sighed, holding her hand. "I know, Mama, but it hurts." And it did hurt, because Richard wasn't just some spoiled billionaire's son. No, he was a man carved from sacrifice and sweat. When he was only 7, he watched his mother walk for miles under the sun, selling roasted plantain just to buy him pencils. In secondary school, while other boys carried lunchboxes, carried a pocket Bible Mama Esther gave him, using faith to fight hunger. When his father died of sickness and no one helped, it was Mama Esther who begged on the streets for money too. Treat him, she never remarried. She focused only on Richard, molding him into a man no storm could break. Richard studied hard, kept away from street boys, and refused to let poverty define him. He got a scholarship to study abroad, graduate topped of his class, and came back to Nigeria to build a tech company. The world now called him the Digital Lion.